Hello, all, and welcome to another edition of Everyday Black History, where we highlight the historical contributions and achievements of black men and women, both past and present. Now, today we're going to be specializing and we're going to be highlighting an institution. And this institution is Manassas Industrial School for Colored Youth. Now, this was a school that was founded by Jeannie Dean, and it was a former school for African American children in Manassas, Virginia. Jeannie Dean, who we will do an episode on later, she was a charismatic ex-slave who believed in the value of vocational education for African American youth of both sexes. Now, Jeannie Dean and other African Americans, with the assistance of sympathetic whites, established the school as a private residential institution in 1893. Back then, there weren't too many schools for African American children past the sixth grade. And in 1938, after the Virginia Supreme Court finally interpreted the 1902 state constitution's free public education requirement as mandating public schools for African American children as well as white children, a regional public school system took over operations and ran the school until 1959. Now, this 1902 state constitution was litigated. It was a litigation that was sponsored, rather, by the NAACP to push so that African American children can get the same education as white children. So, for approximately 20 years, from 1938 to 1958, the Manassas Industrial School became the only school for secondary education of African American students in 5 Virginia counties. After World War II, Northern Virginia's population increased, and the NAACP followed victories, improving salaries for black teachers and allowing black children to receive bus rides to segregated schools by litigating directly against segregated schools. This led to several important court decisions against segregation in the 1950s and 60s, including Brown versus Board of Education and other companion cases from Virginia. Opponents of integration initially implemented a massive resistance strategy, but in the end, the schools were integrated. The Manassas Industrial School closed in 1959 after the Virginia Supreme Court and a 3-judge panel of federal judges both separately ruled on January 19, 1959, against the core Virginia massive resistance legislation. Once schools were integrated, there was no need for this school, or so it was felt at the time. The Manassas Industrial School buildings were demolished, and a new elementary school with ball fields and park facilities were constructed nearby. A series of historic markers were erected on the property, and the site was landscaped and was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1994. As mentioned, there weren't many schools for African American children past the sixth grade during that time, so this school and this creation was very important for African American children, helping them to get an education, to move them forward, and to have a life that was equal and equivalent to those of their white counterparts. So, Jeannie Dean, we salute you. And we thank you for forming this school with the help of other like-minded individuals and making it so that children of that time can move forward. And no doubt it helped us as people today to move forward as a people today as well. So that concludes this episode of Everyday Black History. And tune in as we'll be highlighting more people, more institutions that cater to black men and women that helped us to move us forward and to help move black history forward. So thanks again and stay tuned for the next episode.